Pumpkinhead summoning rituals, ghosts and their trauma from the final shade battle and loss of Tarj. Today we dive into some spooky tales from this year's Festival of the Lost lore book. Happy Halloween, Guardians, and let's take a look. Tales of the Forgotten Volume 4 this year tells us of a couple of different tales. Most of these books do it in a way that bounces between stories, so one lore card could be about pumpkins and the next about some other spooky story. This year it follows two specific threads. In the Last City Market, Glint sees a group of teens running with a pumpkin trying to summon spooky headless ones using rituals and artifacts. And second, ghosts reflect with Micah, Eva, and Mihalova, one of the astronauts from the Ares missions, about the trauma from the final shade battle against the Witness. Let's first start by reading some cards with the Headless One story. I'm going to read text and lore cards from those entries. It won't have everything, but close to all of it. "Come on, quick," a voice shouted. Glint turned to see 4 teens rush by the stall, narrowly avoiding a cart full of vegetables. To Glint's surprise, one teen carried a large pumpkin. "These kids and their Headless One's nonsense, I swear," the stall owner said. "It's that time of year, silly pranks abound," responded a patron with a chuckle. Glint quickly floated after them. Glint saw the teens running into an abandoned building and floated in behind them. The rays from the setting sun trickled through the windows, allowing Glint to find his way without providing his own light. Keeping to the shadows, he bobbed his way through piles of debris, passing half-finished murals in the walls until he found the room the pranksters had decided to make their hideout. As he entered, he noticed a collection of curiosities that he couldn't quite place. But it was an unfamiliar book in one of the teens' hands that claimed his attention first. It looked thrown together, pages of varying quality and color poked out haphazardly, like an art project gone wrong. No, the pumpkin has to be in the center, Cash," the young awoken girl said, exasperated. Glint spotted Cash. The human boy made a patronizing face but moved the pumpkin anyway with its carved out eyes and sharp teeth. The item in question fit with what Glint knew of Headless Ones. Nothing about it glowed, which was a good sign, so he dipped shyly behind a box to avoid detection and continued to examine the room while the teens argued over this ritual. There were some unusual objects in the room. Glint scanned them when he was sure no one was looking. Colorful fabrics draped over various things. 100 or so melting candles, counterfeit gambit coins, swords that were supposed to be hive in origin, candy dumped in a variety of buckets, boxes, and vases. Everything was a forgery, some sort of fake. 2 young Elixni had been standing off to one side. At the awoken girl's behest, they approached her in the center of the makeshift ritual circle. That was when Glint's eye caught something interesting. An altar, covered in more candles and smaller baubles that reflected against something familiar, an item he hadn't expected to find here, a golden reliquary container. A debate had started between the teens. While they were distracted, Glint could easily float unnoticed from one hiding spot to the next. They were arguing whether to use melted candy on their hands to bond them even further before the ritual, which resulted in huffs and objections. Cash sighed at the response to his suggestion. Glint floated past some deactivated or more likely broken Cabal shields and some weird blue substance in a mason jar before stopping at a box a few feet from the altar. He wasn't close enough to scan it, but it certainly looked like a real reliquary. It sat beside a book holder that took up the center of the table. There were other items around it, a gold medallion with a symbol he didn't recognize, an orb that shimmered like starlight, an assortment of scarves and rocks that gleamed in the candlelight. But nothing looked as potentially concerning as the reliquary. Anything could be in there. He glanced over at the group for a moment. Having checked that their attention was elsewhere, he floated over to the altar for a closer inspection. The teens stood in a circle. At the center was a pumpkin, positioned in the middle of an intricate symbol, painted with unsure brushstrokes smudged to fix mistakes. "Stop fidgeting, Nirsk," the young Elixni girl muttered, tightening her grip on the other Elixni's hands. "You don't see Cash or Rhea fidgeting." "I'm not fidgeting," said Nirsk as he grabbed Cash's hand. "If you're scared, I'm sure we can do this alone." "Melly, I'm fine," Nirsk retorted, his tone short. "Everyone ready?" Rhea asked. The teens nodded. In one hand, she held up the book she'd been leafing through when Glint initially arrived. The words they strung together seemed a bit nonsensical, despite recognizing a few. Glint approached the altar with the intention of scanning the reliquary, but he couldn't. Confused, Glint tried again. Nothing happened. His sensors were jammed. He couldn't even send an SOS to the Vanguard. A violet glow danced in his peripherals, demanding his attention. He spun around and, to his surprise, saw it was from the pumpkin head, eyes and mouth alight. Panic surged through Glint. No, 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 no. According to all the research he and Ido had done on the headless ones over the years, this shouldn't have been possible. It shouldn't have been allowed to happen. Nothing in this room was real, or at least shouldn't have been able to power a ritual. The book. It had to have been the book. The teens were lost in the trance of their spell, a palpable energy lifting them slowly from the ground. This was only supposed to be a prank. Glint tried once more to reach out to the Vanguard, to Crow, but his radio was eating static. He did the next best thing. "Hey!" he shouted. It worked instantly. The startled teens yelled in surprise, and, with their concentration broken, tumbled to the ground with loud thuds. "The hell is a ghost doing here?" Cash asked. Everyone had risen, hissing painfully to their feet. They looked around as they brushed themselves off and checked for injuries. "Wait," Melly said. Glint floated closer to them, and the Elixni's eyes widened. "That's not just any ghost, Egghead. That's the Hunter Vanguard's ghost." "Glint?" Nirsk asked. Melly nodded. Beside them, the flickering candlelight danced on Rhea's pale violet arms as she folded them protectively over the book. "That doesn't answer the question," she said defensively. "I could ask you the same," said Glint. He looked at each of them in turn, but found his gaze drawn invariably back on the book. Even from a distance, it didn't look special. "What in the world were you trying to do exactly? Summon a headless one?" "What? No, that'd be ridiculous," Rhea said. "Everyone knows there's no way to do that." "Yeah, exactly," Cash said. "We were trying to speak to the dead." Glint blinked. "You were trying to… what?" Glint asked, taken aback. "Well," Melly started, then paused. She looked hesitantly at her peers. "We were talking about how many people fell during the war, and, we just wanted to try and speak to them." Glint noted the cautiousness in her voice. He floated higher to the level with their faces and saw how they all looked away from him as if ashamed, or was it something more? "We don't care about stupid pranks," Rhea explained quietly. "We had heard that this time of year was best to try something like this." "The hall between," Glint muttered. They nodded. Realization dawned on Glint. They'd lost people to the witness, and they were looking for solace, for answers. They wanted to feel close to their loved ones again after having had them taken away so suddenly and without warning. Glint could understand that. "I put this book together with all the things we found during our research," Rhea said. She gently placed the book on its stand at the altar. "My mentor," her voice faltered. "She always said to keep your notes in one place so they're easier to find. She never liked things to be messy." "My sister was also like that," Cash said, eyes downcast. Nirsk and Melly looked at each other. One of Melly's arms wrapped around Nirsk. "Our brother went into the Great Machine as well," Melly started. "It should have been me," Nirsk whispered. Glint felt their sorrow deeply. They were all so young. I was going to join him. I was supposed to be there, Nirsk said. But I was a coward. I turned back. He didn't look at me with shame, only understanding, and that somehow makes it worse. I should have given my life to protect the great machine too. Nirsk kicked the pumpkin head just hard enough for it to tumble out of the circle they'd painted on the floor, its face dark and mocking. You shouldn't think like that, Glint said, his tone soft and full of empathy. I know that's easier said than done, but trust me when I say I understand. Someone I knew died, and I thought, why not me? It's so easy, isn't it? To blame ourselves and think we could have done something differently. If only I'd been there, maybe they'd still be here. Emotion welled up within the ghost, and he struggled to contain it. How do you get past that? Nirsk asked. It just feels like ether draining out of me constantly, and I don't know how to stop it. Time, Glint said simply. You give it time, and you lean on each other. You get through it together. The teens were quiet. Glint knew it wasn't the answer they wanted. They were here in search of closure. Their hopes pinned on forged relics and fabricated rituals. All they wanted was closure. We're sorry, the teens mumbled together, their voices sad. Are we in trouble with the Vanguard? Rhea asked. Glint shook his shell from side to side. No, you're not, but I'm going to clear this place out and make sure nothing is amiss. Get on home, okay? They nodded and turned away. He added loud enough for them to hear. And no more rituals. You don't know what could happen if you accidentally mix real spells together. Thank you, Glint, Nirsk said, and lingered for just a moment before he joined his sister. Glint sighed. Any other year, he'd been excited at the idea of the potential ritual to summon a headless one. But this year he simply wanted some time for quiet contemplation. Figuring out what caused such a strange phenomenon could wait. It was a problem for him and Ido to revisit at a future date. For his own peace of mind, Glint scanned the reliquary and was relieved to find that it was just packed full of candy. Our next tale is more of a ghost therapy session of sorts. Ghost, your own ghost, Glint, Hocus, Ikora's ghost, Kugu, Lexicon, Bee, and Bat are all present. These are a bunch of different ghosts, while Micah 10, Eva, and Mihailova ask questions and try to relieve their suffering. We first begin with the ghost Kugu, who has a bunch of anger built up and resentment toward the witness. The witness is a spineless, weak jerk that made everyone's lives horrible. Who asked for its opinion of how the universe should be run? No one. I've never seen such an entitled being in my life. I wish I could have gone shell to smokehead with it. I would have ripped it in. So this ghost clearly has some anger issues after the final shape, and rightfully so against the witness. The ghost Lexicon responds by saying you can't hold this anger in, poison yourself in the future, but letting Kugu acknowledge those emotions could be part of this healing process. The ghost Bee has a terrifying experience. I'm not sure if Bee was one of the ghosts that was a part of Micah's quests, but they say we almost died during the war. I know that almost isn't as bad as did, but I haven't felt the same since then. Now you may have noticed Glint talking about a character that he lost. This likely was Tarj. In this therapy session, Glint reflects on the losses faced in the war. The war with the witness was never going to end without losses. I don't think any of us wanted that, but we all knew that if it meant saving lives, we'd pay whatever price was asked. But I've never felt a ghost's death before. I didn't even know Tarj for very long. I wish I could have gotten to know him better. Ikora's ghost has the same feeling and is haunted by Tarj's sacrifice, seeing it as both reckless and inevitable. Tarj was a pain, just like Zavala sometimes, but he was a good ghost. You get used to someone's presence when you've been around them for so long, even if you don't speak often. I knew he was going to do it. Something reckless, but I thought he would make it out. And lastly, we have some text from your own ghost after the events of the final shape's ending and sacrificing itself. Final deaths are always a possibility. We all know that. There's a complacency we feel, A comfortability when it comes to our immortality, but being in the Pale Heart, fighting alongside the Guardian, feeling the damage to me increasing with each moment. I don't know why I came back. I don't know why it was me and not Tarj. He should have come back. So this is very interesting. Ghost feels this sort of survivor's guilt or remorse because he's alive and Tarj isn't. You may not know some of these deep stories and emotions that your ghost feels. Ghost has felt this way about other things in the past too, especially back when the witness was taking control of Ghost. Micah ends by saying, Tarj's death was a tragedy, and so was yours. And it's okay that you don't feel okay. Any one of us would likely feel the same. You're not alone, Ghost. You are here and we're here for you. We'll get through it together. So Guardians, there you have this year's Festival of the Lost, Tales of the Forgotten Volume 4. If you'd like to see Volume 1 through 3, I posted that yesterday in sort of a big summary video. And if you'd like to see some other Destiny lore and mysteries, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video.